Number 5. Madame Lalaurie Mansion. In the French Quarter of New Orleans stands the Royal Street Mansion, which was once home to Madame Marie Delphine Lalaurie. Born in 1780, Madame Lalaurie was a socialite and serial killer, known for torturing and killing her house slaves. On April 10, 1834, the local police responded to a house fire at the mansion. When the fire marshals arrived, they found a 70-year-old woman chained to the stove by her ankles. She confessed to starting the fire so she could avoid being taken upstairs to an attic room nobody returned from. When this room was investigated, they found 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. Some had been left hanging in the prison for months. Judge Jean-Francois Canogne entered the room and found a black woman wearing an iron collar and an old black woman who had received a very deep wound on her. When Madame Lalaurie was questioned about the slaves she had tortured and killed, she scoffed, "Some people had better stay at home rather than come to others' houses to dictate laws and meddle with other people's business." After digging in the yard, authorities found more bodies, including some of children. An angry mob descended on the house, demolishing everything they could lay their hands on. Madame Lalaurie had to flee with her family to France to avoid being killed by locals who wanted her blood. The house remained in ruins from the mob until 1888, when it restored. In April 2007, actor Nicolas Cage bought the house for $3.45 million. Then, in 2009, the property was listed for auction as a result of bank foreclosure and purchased by Regions Financial Corporation for $2.3 million. Number 4. Gaudet Laprette Mansion. In the late 1830s, Jean-Baptiste Laprette, a wealthy plantation owner, bought the Gaudet Laprette Mansion at 716 Dauphin Street, also in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Little did he know that this grand house was set to become the location of one of the most mysterious and vicious mass killings in American history. Jean-Baptiste was not occupying the house himself, so he allowed a rich young sultan from Turkey to lease the house from him. The rich sultan moved in with his entourage and would use the house for entertaining guests. Locals noticed that heavy drapes were added to all the windows and more locks were added to the gates. The sultan would hold parties all through the night, and a neighbor said they could also smell incense coming from the house. Then, one morning in 1836, blood was noticed escaping from the front door and down the steps out into the street. Police broke down the door and found every person in the house either dismembered or mutilated. The Sultan did not survive. His body was found buried alive in the courtyard. There are many theories surrounding what could have happened at the Sultan's house. Pirates were firstly to blame, and then the Sultan's brother, so he could become the only family heir. In 1966, the house was purchased by investors and divided into 6 apartments. A wife of one of the investors lived in the house during the renovations. She told the Times-Picayune newspaper there were signs the home was haunted. She recalled, "There, at the foot of my bed, I thought I saw the figure of a man. When the form suddenly seemed to move towards the side of my bed, I panicked and turned on the light on my night table. There is also a legend of a tree in the backyard, above where the Sultan was buried alive, which appears to have the shape of someone crawling out of the ground." Almost 2 centuries on, and still nobody knows what happened inside the house that night. Number 3. The Taliesin House. American architect Frank Lloyd Wright built the Taliesin House located south of the village of Spring Green in Iowa County, Wisconsin. He designed the home 2 years after he left his first wife and began living with his mistress, Mama Borthwick. His dream home was finished in 1911. Then, in 1914, a 31-year-old chef named Julian Carlton started working at the home over the summer. As weeks passed, other staff noticed that Carlton had become paranoid and that he would stay up late at night with a butcher's knife just staring out of the window. Wright and Borthwick were not happy with Carlton being in the house, and on August the 14th they made him aware this would be his last day at work. The next day, when Wright was away in Chicago, Carlton grabbed a hatchet and began to attack those in the house. He killed Mama Borthwick with a single blow to the face and then slaughtered her son John as he sat in a chair. He poured gasoline over their bodies and set them on fire, burning the house down too. Carlton then went to the adjoining house where 6 residents lived and poured gasoline underneath the door before setting it on fire. A draftsman named Herbert Fritz managed to escape through an open window, though he broke his arm in the process. Carlton then hid and waited for other residents to try and escape. As foreman William Weston and his 13-year-old son Ernest ran through the door, Carlton attacked, killed them with the hatchet. 2 more residents, labourer Thomas Brunker and gardener David Limbaugh, managed to fight off Carlton, but they died days later from their injuries. With everyone slaughtered, Carlton attempted suicide by swallowing hydrochloric acid, but this failed to kill him. Neighbours noticed the house burning and they attempted to put out the fire. Carlton was arrested by Iowa County Sheriff John Williams and transferred to the county jail in Dodgeville. The hydrochloric acid he had ingested badly burnt his esophagus, and he found it impossible to swallow food. He died of starvation in his cell 47 days after the killings. Heartbroken over the loss of his lover, Wright buried her body at the home, but did not mark the grave because he could not bear to be reminded of the tragedy. A few months after the deaths, Wright rebuilt the Taliesin, almost identical to the original. Later in life, he struggled with insomnia, weight loss, and temporary blindness before moving to Chicago so his sister could take care of him. Number 2, the Los Feliz Mansion. The Los Feliz Mansion at 2475 Glendower Place, Los Angeles, has been one of the area's long-standing mysteries. In 1959, Dr. Harold Perelson, who worked as a cardiologist, struck his wife with a hammer at 4:30 a.m. He then left her to bleed to death on the floor as he entered his teenage daughter's bedroom and struck her with a hammer too. The blow had not killed her, and she woke the neighbors as she screamed, "Don't kill me!" She managed to escape the home and called the police. Back in their house, Dr. Perelson entered the bedroom of the 2 youngest children and told them, "Go back to bed. This is a nightmare." He then took an overdose of 31 sleeping pills and was dead before the ambulance arrived. Since this terrifying incident, according to those who have dared to get close to the house, there are still Christmas presents under a tree in the living room, all of which can be seen clearly through the downstairs windows. Nobody understood why Perelson committed such an awful crime, or why the house was left completely untouched. Since 1959, the property has been under the different name of many owners, but no one has moved in. The current owner, Rudy Enriquez, inherited the mansion from his parents, who bought it at an auction, yet he only uses the home for storage. And number 1, the Amityville Horror House. On the night of November 13th, 1974, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. shot his parents, 2 brothers and 2 sisters with a .35 caliber rifle, all whilst they slept in their own beds at the 6-bedroomed 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, Long Island. After the killings, DeFeo Jr.'s defense attorney tried to gain an insanity plea and helped DeFeo testify that he heard voices telling him to murder his family. Little did they know that this fabrication of the truth would result in one of the most well-known murder stories ever told, the Amityville Horror. 13 months after the DeFeo family were murdered, George and Kathleen Lutz bought the house for a bargain at $80,000 for them and their 3 children. Much of the DeFeo family's furniture was still in the house and had also been included as part of the deal. A friend of George Lutz told the family about the history of the house and insisted they have it blessed. On the day they moved in, Father Mancuso, a local priest, arrived to bless the house. But when he flicked the holy water, he heard a masculine voice demand, "Get out!" and he fled from the house. During the time they lived in the house, the following incidents occurred. George woke at around 3 a.m. every morning and would sleepwalk to the boathouse. It is estimated this was the time of day the DeFeo murders took place. The house was constantly plagued with a swarm of flies. Their 5-year-old daughter Missy had made an imaginary friend called Jody. Then, one day, George even witnessed the imaginary friend stood behind Missy. And in the living room, a crucifix revolved on the wall until it was completely upside down. On January 14, 1976, George and Kathy Lutz fled with their 3 children and their dog Harry, leaving all their possessions behind.